Well, this is a hard section of Scripture. Whenever you come to a passage that's confusing, like all who read Genesis 6 would admit that this is a confusing passage, what you want to do is read chapters before and after the problem text. And if we look at this, we see that there are two genealogies. And we might ask the question, why are they there? And if I could just pull this up and I will put myself in view. You see, you have this genealogy: Adam, Cain, Enoch, Irad, Mehujael, Methushael, Lamech. And then the one in Genesis 5, Adam, notice it's starting the same person: Adam, Seth, Enosh, Kenan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch. Interesting that you're starting to have repeated names. Methuselah, and then Lamech, and Lamech's a repeated name. Lamech is Noah's father, and so when you come to this text, you might ask the question, well, why are these two genealogies here? What's the point that God is trying to make? And we might point out as we look at this, Enoch, who's the seventh one down from Adam, Enoch walked with God and he was not, for God took him. And that walk with is similar language of Noah. It's used of God walking around in the Garden of Eden. And so somehow Enoch is in this line that is somehow connected with God. It may go back to the statement after Seth's birth. It said men began to call on the name of the Lord, Karab Hashem Adonai, the standard way of worshiping the Lord is described in the Old Testament. And so we have people who are walking with God, and then the seventh one down, God takes that person. When you compare that with the Genesis 4, we have seventh one down as Lamech, and Lamech, as far as we know, is the first polygamist in the Bible. We read the story carefully. He's the first wife abuser. He's threatening his wives if they don't do what he says. He threatened murder, that he killed multiple people. And he even put himself in the place of God, where God avenges Cain. Lamech, I guess, is avenging himself. What's interesting in the comparison of genealogies, the genealogies in 5 give some kind of chronology. The ones in 4 don't. The ones in 5 all say that there were other sons and daughters, but in the one in 4, there's only one female offspring given, and her name is Naamah. Now, one of the things that we can do whenever we come to a text is ask, what do these names mean? And if we do that, you find some interesting things. There are some meanings of names that we can't really be sure exactly what they mean. But when we come to the word Naamah, we have a little bit of help with that. And the way you would find that is you come to the place in the text in chapter 5 where it mentions, or chapter 4, it mentions Naamah. And in, I guess it's verse 22, you just do a word study. So you come to the section. Couple of different ways to do a word study. You can do the Bible word study. I always like just looking up where the text appear. And so we have our passage, 4:22, but we see in 1 Kings 14:21 that Rehoboam, who is Solomon's son, that his mother was an Ammonite, and her name is the exact same word, the exact same spelling. So Solomon married lots of different women, and it says that they turned all his foreign wives turned his heart away from God. And so you wonder if the writer of 1 Kings isn't saying that Solomon was like whoever these sons of God are in 6. And you see a couple of different times her name is given there, and in Chronicles as well. His mother's name was Naamah, the Ammonite. If we look up the root of the word, and we can do that, if you right-click it here, click there, do the Bible word study, and I will float this panel so that we can, let me just pull this over so we can see it. If we scroll down, it will tell us the possible roots of the word, and notice that Naim means lovely or delightful or pleasant. And you start to wonder, the verbal root is to speak softly or to sing. This person who's almost like a siren song of beauty. And, you ask that, and then you say, oh my goodness, is this what chapter 6 is about? It says that the B'nai Ha-Elohim saw that the Banot Ha-Adam, the daughters of the Adam, that they were Tov. And when we look at this, we're faced with this. Who are the B'nai Ha-Elohim, the sons of the Elohim? Well, who are God's sons elsewhere in the Old Testament? Does God say anything about Israel? Is Israel ever called God's son? Is the king ever called God's son? Is the coming Messiah ever called God's son? And when we come to this passage and we look, it says, the B'nai Ha-Elohim saw the Banot Ha-Adam, the daughters of the Adam, that they were good. Now, it's hard to see in English because it's usually translated were attractive or lovely or beautiful or something like that. But in the Hebrew, this language saw that it was good, mimics precisely Genesis 1. God creates, and God saw that it was good. God saw that it was good. With the creation of Adam, the first time God says it was not good, Adam to be alone. But then we come to Eve, and having been given a command by God, it says Eve saw that the fruit, Tara Ki Tov, she saw that it was good, and she took, can't really see it in English, but in Hebrew, that's forbidden fruit language. So whoever these B'nai Ha-Elohim are, it's some kind of forbidden fruit. They're taking these women that they should not take. Now, what's interesting about this passage is when we come and we read it, and whenever you get into really deep in the weeds, you're going to have to look at the original text. That's where the answer always lies. The modern church times doesn't celebrate study of the original language. That's a mistake. We're an outlier all other ages wanted to get all we could of the original writing. So if we do that here, notice that you have this statement. It came about when Ha-Adam, the Adam, usually translated mankind, but it's the word Ha-Adam, the Adam, began to be great on the Adamah. You can probably hear the play on words there. And daughters were were intensely born to them. It was kind of weird. It's a pual, not just a nifal. Were born to them. That it came about the B'nai Ha Elohim, the sons of God, saw that the daughters of Ha-Adam, that they were good, beautiful, I guess, interpretive, and they took for themselves wives from whomever they chose. And God said, hey, that's it. Well, here's a question. Is Noah included or excluded in Ha-Adam? Verse 3, the Lord said, my spirit will not struggle with, or it kind of looks like the word judge. This word doesn't appear that much, so you might want to do a word study. But I'm going to do struggle here. My spirit will not struggle with Ha-Adam, with the Adam, forever, inasmuch as he is flesh. His days will be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth. Interestingly enough, somehow the Nephilim survived the flood, and we're faced as an interpreter, where does that word appear? It's related to the Hebrew word fall. So who are these fallen ones? In those days, and also afterwards, whenever the B'nai Ha-Elohim went into the daughters of the Adam, and they bore for them the Gibborim. This word appears in Isaiah 9 of the little child who was born. El Gibbor is God, the mighty warrior, and so Gibbor is usually like the fighting ones. The Gibborim were born from of old, who were men of the name, and I'm interpreting that famous men. God saw that the evil of Ha-Adam was great on the earth, and that every intent of the thought of his heart was only on evil all the time. And the Lord was sorry that he made Ha-Adam. Now, the question is, does that include or exclude Noah? Is Noah part of Ha-Adam, or is he excluded? Well, when we get to chapter 8, after the flood, there are only 8 people alive. And let's see which verse. We'll start with 20. Noah built an altar to the Lord and took from all the clean animals, from every clean bird, and made them go up as a burnt offering on the altar. And the Lord God smelled the pleasing aroma, the Noah-ing aroma, interestingly enough, in Hebrew. And the Lord said to his heart, I will never again make slight of or curse, P-L curse, the Adamah for the sake of Ha-Adam, because the intent of the heart of Ha-Adam is evil from his youth. Well, this question is Noah included or excluded? Well, at the end of this story, there are only 8 people who are alive on planet Earth at that point, and those 8 people are being called Ha-Adam, and the repetition, every intent of the thought of his heart is only on evil all the time, is applying to those who've been saved through the flood, which raises the idea, well, how did the Nephilim survive? Well, is is it in the flesh of Noah? Is this fallen, fleshly, reproducing people not out of a spiritual new heart, but a fallen body? Is that how the Nephilim survived the flood? And at least as interpreters, we need to face that question. And the answer may very well be yes, that it is the fallen flesh. You're wanting a new Adam. The problem is Noah still has the old flesh. So how does God fix that? Now, notice when we go back, here I'll just come to our text of 6. The B'nai Elohim saw the daughters of Ha-Adam, that they were good, that they were beautiful, and they took for themselves wives from. Now, if we did a search, and this is a kind of a complicated search, you have to be able to read Hebrew to do it. You look up every place lakak appears, every place in the same sentence le appears, every place isha nashim appears, and every place from appears. Take for themselves wives from. What you end up finding, and I think I may have the document here. What you do if you do that is you get all of these places where that exact phrase appears, and it's all about intermarriage or non-intermarriage with pagans. Don't give your son, to marry a pagan woman, and don't take a pagan woman for your son. So it could be that this phrase, take for themselves wives from, is actually a prohibition from intermarriage. And if that's the case, we might go back to our original question here. Why are these, here, I think it's in preview. Why are these two genealogies? And why is there only one daughter's name, one named daughter? And you think, why in the world would the son of godly Enoch marry his, why would he name his kid after a multi-murdering, wife-abusing polygamist? And there may be your answer. He may have looked to this very wealthy, very influential, very prominent family and said, I know that God doesn't want us to intermarry with pagans, but this girl, her name means the lovely one. And hey, I'll missionary date, I'll lead her to the Lord. How many times you've heard that before? And how often does it work in the Old Testament? And notice, too, that the first audience who would have heard this is the audience in the plains of Moab. And if you think about what's going on, Balaam can't curse, but he does give advice. He says, I can't curse these people, but I can tell you this, that if you find the most beautiful pagan women you can and get them to intermarry, what will happen is they'll introduce pagan worship, and the result will be that you can have victory over these people. So I think that this passage is talking about the intermarriage of those who are calling on the name of the Lord versus those who are saying, I don't need God to be good. I can be good all by myself. And what we have is Cain's a murderer, Lamech's a multi-murderer. Adam listened to the voice of his wife rather than listening to the voice of God. In many ways, he wasn't deceived. Paul says he wasn't deceived. He chose his wife over God. And how does that work out? Well, it doesn't work out well. It leads to all kinds of sin. So the application, I would think, would be under that view that you have the wonder of Christ, who is the perfect Redeemer. And I think in terms of the meta-narrative, there was only one Son of God who ever married a daughter of Adam, the corporate, the church, the new Eve. And rather than being taken by her beauty, he elects someone who intrinsically has no beauty, but who turns her into the most glorious woman in the world. The Bible starts with a failed cosmic wedding, and it ends with that new Adam and new Eve reigning and ruling in a new Garden of Eden. There's only one Son of God who ever loved a daughter of Adam, and his solution was by giving her a new heart and by causing her to walk in God's ways. Everyone else seems, at least in the Old Testament, seems to be conquered. Samson was conquered by a beautiful pagan woman. David wrongly sinned with Bathsheba. He was a worshiper of God, but he was no match for that battle. Solomon was the wisest earthly king who ever lived, and yet he wasn't wise enough to follow God's advice. The priest who returned under Ezra intermarried, and so you can see over and over again you have this pattern of people choosing beautiful pagan women over God. And what we have in this story is, if Methuselah marries Naamah, and I mean, there are plenty of Jewish people who think Naamah, this lovely woman, is the issue. Some Judaica thinks that it's Noah who married her. I don't know. I think the text is suggesting maybe Methuselah married her, and they named their kid after her father. And yet, Noah finds grace. And when we come to this, we can't really see it in English, but in Hebrew, can you see that the word grace, hain, is the inversion of the word Noah? Noah found hain. Noah found grace, pity, mercy, not what he deserved, but God's pity. He found the opposite of what he should have gotten, and the result is Noah was a righteous man, perfect in his generation. Ele Toledoth, Noah. That Toledoth is related to the word Yelid, like having a baby. So Noah finds grace, and what's the result of finding grace? Well, Noah is a righteous man, perfect. Well, is he inherently perfect? Well, he's not inherently perfect because he's under the Ha-Adam. And we know that because after the flood, he's conquered by the fruit of a tree. His nakedness is exposed. His offspring ends up cursed. He's the head of a new human race, but clearly the fallenness is still there. And so in this story, this is not, as many have argued, the procreation of angels and human women, but rather the intermarriage that was the temptation that, frankly, faced all the people of Israel in the past, and which continues to this day. I mean, how many times have you had a ministry opportunity where someone is tempted to say, well, I know they're not a believer, but, And the scripture says, hey, don't do that. If the proper interpretation is angels and women, I have no idea what the application of this would be. Would there be some people who are part demon seed? I think the seed of the woman and seed of the serpent is those who follow God's way and those who choose not to follow God's way. Jesus said of the hypocritical Pharisees, you're of your father, the devil. And if God left us alone, that would be the Toledoth of all of us. But God hasn't left us alone. God has a way. So it's a difficult text. I'll be interested to see with what you guys find out, and I will look forward to talking to you again next time.